Christina Piercing. Everything you should know before getting it done. Coming up next on Consultations by a Piercer, episode number 47. For those who are new to the channel, welcome to the Body Piercing and Tattooing channel. Hope you're enjoying the videos and you're finding them helpful and useful, but you might not know who I am. My name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located right here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. We're going to be talking about a female genital piercing called a Christina today. If you're one of those people that's easily offended or doesn't want to learn about that or doesn't want to hear anything that might be slightly sexual in nature or adult in nature, I would suggest you find one of our other videos to watch. If you are looking for something that's going to be tantalizing and somehow exciting, this is definitely not the video for you. This is solely a video to educate those that are considering this piercing and what they should know before getting it done. Okay, today we're going to be talking about a vulva piercing. This is located at the top where the pubic mound is, where the two labia majora connect, and just above where the minora connects or the clitoral hood is. This is not a piercing that can be done on everybody. Anatomy is very important, and we'll get into that later. But just to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about today. Average healing time of this is usually about 6 to 8 weeks, but I do generally suggest treating it like a healing piercing for a minimum of 3 months. This one can take a little bit longer than other genitalia piercings, so it's a good idea to take care of it until it's healed. I'm going to suggest you clean it twice daily using a sterile saline solution. Personally, I like Neomed's Piercing Aftercare. Comes out in a fine mist. You just mist the area, let it stay in contact for 5 minutes, and blot it dry. However, you might not be able to find that in your area of the world, so you may have to get something else. There are other products on the market that will work. What you're going to look for is a pressurized metal can. It should say sterile on the outside. And when you turn it over and look at the ingredients, it should say water and sodium chloride. No preservatives, nothing else. How it delivers can affect how you use it. If it comes out a fine mist, just do it the way I mentioned earlier. If it comes out like a squirt gun, I don't suggest spraying it directly on there. It's probably going to be pretty messy and not feel great. Another option is to do a cold compress. Take a sterile piece of gauze sponge, which is your best option, or a clean paper towel folded up. Saturate the area with the saline, or saturate it with the saline so it's damp, lay it against the piercing, and do a cold compress for roughly about 5 minutes, and then pat dry. That I'm going to suggest doing twice daily throughout the healing period. The other thing I'm going to suggest doing is the end of your shower, stick the area out and let the water flow over the area for about 30 seconds. What we're doing with these two things is removing that discharge that's going to harden and deposit on the jewelry. The main reason we want it off there is when the jewelry shifts or moves, it can agitate it, which can be uncomfortable and lead to issues. Cross-contamination prevention. Common sense stuff. Wash your hands before you handle it. No oral contact or exchange of bodily fluids on, near, around the piercing for a minimum of 6 months. That doesn't mean that you can't have sexual contact for 6 months. That just means you need to use some type of latex barrier. Keep your environment clean. Clothing, bedding, towels, anything that may come in contact with the piercing needs to be cleaned and disinfected on a regular basis. Do not swim. I know you're going to search the internet until somebody tells you different. And there are plenty of people out there that are going to tell you different. Here's the reality of the situation. You have an open wound on your body, and it's an open wound that stays open longer than a normal cut or scrape would. And it's kind of deep into tissue. Now, anytime you can get in a body of water and submerge yourself completely and swim and move around in it, it's going to be full of microorganisms, regardless of where it is and how well it's maintained. So, if you don't want an infection, don't risk it. Don't swim. Keep pets away from it. Usually when I mention this with this type of piercing, everybody kind of smiles and gets kind of a weird look on their face. Keep them out of the bed mainly. Limit their access or completely block them from your bedding whatsoever. They tend to drag all kinds of things and then deposit it on your sheets. Trauma, clothing, and abuse. Avoid constrictive clothing. Really tight jeans with a really rigid seam right there isn't going to feel terrifically great. Anything that's super tight to the area doesn't generally feel really great from what I understand. Also avoid clothing that's maybe has a lacy design or an area that's easily going to get caught on the jewelry. The other thing is loofahs. Do not use them in the area or simply just throw them away. Do not sleep directly on the piercing. Make sure you're sleeping on your side or your back. Do not spin, rotate, or move the jewelry. There's absolutely no reason to do that, and all you're going to do is increase the likelihood of infection and cause other problems. Plus, it doesn't feel good. Completely avoid contact with the piercing as much as possible. I know the location's one of those areas that's going to get bumped occasionally, but if you can limit the contact, the faster the healing is going to be, the less likely you are to have issues. Risks. This risk with this one, especially if you don't have the correct anatomy, which I'll get into a little bit later, is prone to rejection and migration. It's just one of those piercings that's there. The other thing is over swelling beyond the length of the jewelry and embedding. I've seen this happen quite a few times over the last couple decades. It is one of those areas that if it gets knocked around just a little bit, it starts flaring up. And unless you get that jewelry changed immediately, you will have issues. The other thing is the piercing closing. This piercing is not one of those ones that you can leave the jewelry out for an extended period of time. It's a longer piercing, kind of like a navel. It will close pretty rapidly in most cases. So it's definitely a piece of jewelry or a piercing you want to keep a piece of jewelry in. Now let's talk about sex. You know, the popular conversation most people want to have. Gentle at first. Try to avoid the area if possible. If it hurts to do something, stop, rest, or try something else. Try different positions, different movements, different activities. Latex barrier for a minimum of 6 months. Understand that anytime you switch partners, you should practice safe sex the way you're supposed to, because now you have a genital piercing, which makes you more acceptable to sexually transmitted diseases. Water-based lubricants only. Also, stay away from any type of spermicide, warming gels. Any of that stuff is not going to feel good against that piercing and could agitate it and lead to problems. Now let's talk about placement, angle, and anatomy. The biggest thing I like to tell people is vulvas come in a lot of different shapes, sizes, and types. You're all vastly different. I don't know. One of the most common things I've heard over the years is mine doesn't look like that. And that's not uncommon. That's normal. Where this is positioned is where the pubic mound starts, where the two labium minoris or majoras connect just above the clitoral hood. Some people have a kind of natural ridge there. I always talk about how there's kind of a vast plane of difference between those that are hills and those that are valleys. Hills, more of the genitalia is exposed and out of the body. Valleys, it's more sunken in and more hidden. This piercing is going to work best with somebody that's more on a valley side that is going to have that kind of more pronounced ridge, almost cliff-like at the top. It's basically placed straight up and down right through that. And the angle is pretty much equivalent to a navel piercing, almost at a slightly upward angle so that the bottom, more like a floating navel actually, where the bottom sits more deeper into the area than the top. Jewelry-wise, I suggest curved barbells. Flat back curves can work really well here, depending on the anatomy and your comfort level. Not having something big in that area having something big in that area, like a ball, can agitate certain people. Also, because the tissue is so soft, I've found having an end that has a flat back tends to be a better option in this area and heals with less problems and no nesting. And nesting is where the jewelry kind of makes an indentation into the tissue. I don't suggest piercing this with a ring or circular jewelry. The jewelry should be threadless or internally threaded. No externally threaded jewelry should be put in this piercing. Now let's talk about pain and how the piercing's done and what the piercing experience is like. I have heard everything from this being on a scale of 1 to 10, a 2 to probably an 8. Everybody has a slightly different experience with this. Because it's kind of at the borderline of the genitalia, Sometimes this will act like a genital piercing where it's ow, God, that hurts, and then it stops. And then other times it can be an ow, oh, that hurts, oh, now it's throbbing. So it's kind of varies from person to person. However, I will say that it's not something that is going to kill you. Breathing exercise is always helpful. I generally suggest taking a deep breath and holding it and then exhaling. This piercing I do freehand using either a cork or a needle receiving tube, depending on the person as anatomy and what works with their anatomy. Basically, the needle is injected in and through, usually from the bottom, sometimes from the top, depends on the person. Then the jewelry follows through with a needle. Basically, I use a guide pin, put the jewelry through, close it up. There we are. Usually, like I said, some people will notice a little bit of throbbing and aching immediately afterwards. Also, there's also sometimes a little bit of slight bleeding. But experiences vary. Now, what should you consider before getting this done? First off, you're not going to be able to sleep on this piercing. Kind of think that through, plan ahead. If you're a stomach sleeper, find a different way to either elevate the piercing off the bed or avoid rolling over on it. Talk to your partner if you have one. And if, kind of plan this out. Have a romantic or a enjoyable, fun time before getting the piercing done. Because you're probably not going to be too frisky for a little while. It's not going to feel great. So kind of get that all out of both of your systems. So, and plus, you should discuss this because for that reason and the use of latex barrier, it is going to affect your partner. Yes, it is your body. It's your decision. But you should also get your partner's input, especially if you're in a committed relationship. Good idea to go out and get some loose-fitting clothing. And if you have a lot of fancy underwear, maybe buy in some that aren't so fancy. The other thing, this can bleed anywhere from 3 to 5 days. That varies from person to person. So getting some sanitary napkins or pads will help with cutting down on the bleeding, also, or staining clothing. And also will cut down the amount of moisture in the area and add a little bit of padding while it's going through its initial tender phase. Most people say loose-fitting clothing is best. Experiment. See what works best for you. You just kind of want to keep things away from it at first. Listen to your body. If it hurts to wear something or hurts to do something, it's definitely something you want to avoid for a while. You can't swim. So if you're a swimmer, you need to take some time off from swimming to heal the piercing. Take that into account beforehand. Also, vacations. The problem with vacation is you have no control over how clean your environment is. The other problem is that you're probably going to be, if you've never been there before, you're probably going to be introduced to pathogens and microorganisms you've never been exposed to, and that's going to increase the likelihood of infection. So it's usually best to wait until after a vacation to get this piercing, or any piercing, really. Have you got this piercing? What was your experience like? Write it in the comments. Till next time, here's hoping that piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.